Okay, today we've been sent a case to evaluate for a 3D scan, and I wanted to evaluate immediate placement in site number 19 and immediate placement in site number 29. There are a few things specifically I want to look at in this particular case. So where I'd like to start is one of the things I love seeing, and one of the things that we teach our hygienists to do is to mark the areas of concern in the software. So here we can see on the apical of tooth number 13 and the apical of tooth number 18, they've been marked with findings. And again, you go over here to the findings tab on the right hand side and you click your findings, and then you can make a note of all the different areas. And if you notice, as I hover over these findings, my notes pop up here. Just like here it says periapical area number 18 needs endo. Maybe it needs endo, maybe it needs extraction. Whatever it may be, this way we have a legal documentation that we've done something here. So I always like to point that out. So now let's take a look and let's evaluate tooth number 19 first. So for my evaluations, I always go to the implant align view. Here we have number 19, and what I went ahead and done is duplicated the plan so we can compare the plans. And um, my first assessment is this plan is pretty well done in terms of diagnostically having it in the right place, having it apically extended enough, although that's questionable whether we have enough extension in this particular case um, to gain stability and go from there. So let's pretend this tooth is a good candidate for an immediate implant, and we'll come back to that in a second. My first thing would be um, we have a plan for the widest diameter implant that we have available here in the software. And my only thing would be that in this position, I like our buccal lingual position. I like our mesiodistal position. I like how it's centered very nicely, all done extremely well. Um, my concern would be that we only have a 10 millimeter implant, and we have quite a bit of distance here to the nerve. I would go with the 12 millimeter implant here, and the reason being is that's going to give me more fresh bone to create stability here. So that's the first thing I would try to do in this. The second thing is I believe the implant is planned a little bit deep. So if I were to take a closer look here, I would draw the bone kind of like this. That's my bone level. And then we know that the buccal and lingual are probably a little bit scalloped, just like so. So based on that, this implant is probably a hair deep, not too deep, because we want to expect about a millimeter bone loss from the extraction and a regular extraction, and then place the implant. So in an ideal world, this implant probably needs to come up just a little bit, just like so. Okay, so from a restorative and from an immediate placement perspective, I look at that. The other thing I look at here is if I draw our interproximal bone, buccolingual bone heights, we probably see that more like that. So if we drop 1 millimeter from there, we can probably see that this implant needs to go up just a hair, maybe even to about right there. And that's probably a more ideal position for this implant. Other than that, everything on the planning side is pretty well done. The concern I have on this case, and I don't believe that this is a great case for immediate placement, and that has everything to do with what I'm seeing here in the cross-sectional view. When I go through this, what I'm seeing is there's a dehiscence on the buccal here from this infection or whatever's going on with this tooth, and my guess is going to be that when we take this tooth out, we're going to lose all the buccal plate down to about right here. So when we're done removing the tooth, we will have a defect that looks quite like that on this implant. And that's not a defect that I believe we should be doing an immediate placement on. Maybe if anything it'll come up here, but then it'll definitely drop down from the extraction site. So if, let me change colors here. If, for example, in theory, if we were able to maintain all of this bone right here, then I would be a big proponent of going ahead, place the implant, graft this wally defect, because we have walls on the mesial distal buccal lingual, then it becomes pretty straightforward. My concern is what's going to happen to this green area. I'm pretty positive we're going to lose this. So my suggestion in this particular case, or my plan of action if this were my patient, would be to take the tooth out, do some grafting, socket preservation, whether that's at the time of extraction or post extraction, do some type of socket preservation here, and then come back after we have a healed site to place the implant. So hopefully that makes sense, the reason we're looking at that, and why we want to do that there. Okay. So now let's go ahead and move over to 29. Now the great news on 29 is that it looks pretty darn good. It looks like it's a good site for immediate placement. One of the things I do want to point out here is that we can see that we have a buccal plate right through here. So these are some of the things that I'm looking for. So if I outline my tooth here, even though it's pretty thin, we have buccal plate. It goes to about right here. Okay, just like so. If we outline the rest of the tooth, what we can see is our implant is in quite a bit of nice, quote unquote, fresh bone to provide us stability. So I'm pretty happy with that. You know, again, we have the ability in this particular case to extend a little bit apical. We do have to get some concerns about the location of that in comparison to the mental foramen, because right here we can see the mental foramen. So we are pretty close right there. In fact, if we were to measure that, we would see that this implant is only about 1.19 millimeters away from the mental foramen at this particular position. If we take in the deviance of the guide and the deviance of the drill itself, that may be a little bit too close for comfort for me. So I may, in this case, continue with a 12 millimeter implant on this particular case. The only other thing I can point out here is that I do believe we're a little too close right here. I would probably slide this implant over just a hair to gain a little bit more space, and that would also restoratively put this in a slightly better position. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful. I think that this certainly number 29 can be done. The key factor in number 29 is removing it, maintaining that buccal plate. That would involve periotomes, proximators, try to do atraumatic extraction, apical retention forceps, no buccal pressure whatsoever in removing that tooth. So thank you very much, and appreciate you sending the case in.